Sometimes in professional wrestling, the drama that goes down behind the scenes is even more compelling than what we see on television. And as the centerpiece around which all WWE storytelling is calibrated, and indeed the biggest pro wrestling show of the year, it makes sense that this is particularly true at WrestleMania. WrestleMania's history is as storied backstage as it is on tape, and today we're going to prove it by running through some of the incidents so wild they make TLC 2 look like an afternoon at the library with your gran. I'm Andy for What Culture Wrestling, and these are the 10 most infamous backstage WWE WrestleMania moments. Number 10. Bury 'em all. WrestleMania 31. You remember Triple H vs Sting, right? The match that Vince McMahon tried to turn into another glorious victory over an organization that had been dead for 14 years? Well, if you do, this story probably won't surprise you. Arn Anderson was a road agent in WWE at the time. On a recent episode of his podcast, he claims that McMahon specifically told his announcers to bury Sting and everything WCW related at every possible opportunity. I know it was fed to them, he said, explaining the use of condescending terminology like minnow in a big pond. This is WrestleMania now. This guy's out of his element. All referring to Sting. It really was something else, and quite why Vince went from portraying Sting as a vigilante waging battles against the authority to restarting a war that ended in 2001 is anyone's guess really, but if you go by Anderson's account, presuming it's accurate, it confirms what really happened. Number 9. The attendance scandal from WrestleMania 3. WWE announced an attendance of 93,173 for WrestleMania 3. If accurate, this would have made it the largest recorded attendance of an indoor event in North America. And if we go by that number, WrestleMania 32 would be the only other WWE event to ever top it. But the number has always been disputed. Dave Meltzer used information from the event's promoter, Zane Breslov, to deduce that there were probably around about 78,000 people in the building. Still a big number, but not the biggest. And the debate rages on today. It's crazy to think that we're still talking about this in 2020, but given Vince McMahon and other promoters' propensity to inflate attendance numbers, it's pretty easy to buy into. Number 8. Bruiser Brody's bounty from WrestleMania 1. Okay, so this one is absolutely mental, but the story goes that in 1985, with WrestleMania 1 looming, a rival wrestling promoter had offered Bruiser Brody a large sum of money to invade the event, attack Mr. T during his entrance, and effectively ruin the whole damn thing. The word was that said promoter was retaliating to Vince McMahon's increasingly aggressive and predatory tactics as a promoter, with several fingers pointing at Vern Gagne. Now the Vern part is pure speculation, but let's be honest, who the hell was going to stop a rampaging Bruiser Brody? Certainly wasn't going to be Mr. T or bloody Hulk Hogan. Now obviously this never happened, but Dave Meltzer wrote about it in his Wrestling Observer Tributes book, and Bruce Pritchard has mentioned it as well, giving it a great deal of credence. Number 7. King Kong Bundy almost broke the streak at WrestleMania 11. A boatload of different wrestlers were considered to be the one to break The Undertaker's WrestleMania streak before Brock Lesnar came along at Mania 30. But we've gone with Bundy here because of how damn early it was in the run. This was only The Undertaker's 4th match at WrestleMania. If they derailed the streak before it really became a thing, then it would have never become the big marketable point that it was for years, and such an important part of the event's fabric, taking away from the legendary Deadman his aura, his legacy, and the event as a whole. The story is that Vince McMahon was super high on Bundy at the time. He wanted to push him as a big dominant monster and didn't want him to lose at Mania, so they were going to have him go over via interference. But this didn't happen, thank God, and Taker ended up taking the W with a power slam and a clothesline. Number 6. The Samoans nearly riot at WrestleMania 31. WrestleMania 31's main event was a total banger, with Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns working a bruising match before Seth Rollins ran down, cashed in his Money in the Bank contract, and took the belt. but it almost sparked a riot amongst Roman's family. According to the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Roman's dad, Sika, forgot that the business is not real life and was legit pissed at the finish, looking to start a war, though the elder Samoans were seemingly able to talk them down. It should be noted that company man Michael Hayes has refuted this story. But then you get an actual member of the Samoan wrestling dynasty like Rikishi confirming it, and yeah, Michael Hayes, stop lying, man. Number 5, Mr. T almost no-shows WrestleMania 1. Now, take this one with a pinch of Hulk, because Hogan is one of the key sources on the story, but if you believe him, Mr. T almost didn't show up for the super important WrestleMania 1 main event. A move that would have left one of the most important shows in WWE history in tatters. Hogan claimed that Mr. T was worried about the damage that the match might do to his tough guy reputation. Basically, the guy got cold feet, and an alleged confrontation he had with David Schultz at a house show compounded this, with Hogan claiming that the A-Team star had, and I quote, started getting really sketchy. He was really getting kind of nervous, brother. In a move that should surprise nobody whatsoever, Hogan painted himself as the hero in the story, talking Mr. T round and convincing him to perform. That may well be true, but you know, pinch of Hogan. Number 4, the blading controversy at WrestleMania 8. Vince McMahon was reportedly so pissed off that Ric Flair bladed against Randy Savage at WrestleMania 8 that he put the Nature Boy on blast as soon as he got backstage, with some accounts even stating that he came within a hair of actually firing Rick there and then. An infamous moment in and of itself, but even more interesting when you consider what happened when Roddy Piper wrestled Bret Hart on the same show. The Hitman bled buckets himself, and yes, it was a blade job, but as Bret himself would reveal in his book years later, he was actually able to work management into thinking it was a shoot. Hart disguised it as a hard-way shot off a turnbuckle spot. So while Ric Flair got the hairdryer treatment and almost lost his goddamn job, the Hitman got off scot-free. Genius. Number 3, Savage rages at Shawn and Razor, WrestleMania 10. Shawn Michaels vs Razor Ramon was only the second ladder match in WWE history and an instant classic. But one guy who wasn't thrilled with what went down was Randy Savage. Savage, who wrestled Crush earlier in the night, tore into both wrestlers when they came back through the curtain. What was their crime? Running over their allotted time, thus depriving others, with Bob Holly revealing the whole story, claiming that Macho Man was so pissed, Bob thought he was gonna beat them up. A 10-man tag team match was apparently scrapped as a result of this, and while Holly says he enjoyed the match, he claimed that Razor and Shawn were deliberately ignoring the referee as he fed them time cues, showing the other side of a match that many consider an undisputed classic. Number 2, Lesnar lobs the belt at WrestleMania 34. If you had a dispute with your employer, you might send them a firmly worded email, you might ask for a meeting, or in extreme cases, file a grievance. What you most certainly wouldn't do is launch 10 pounds of metal and leather right at their bloody head, because you're not Brock Lesnar and you can't get away with it. We know that this happened because we saw the footage on the WWE 24 documentary that covered Mania 34, with Brock seemingly raging at how his failed main event with Roman Reigns was laid out, furious with the terrible crowd reactions. There were reports of an intense backstage confrontation between Vince and Brock immediately after the event, with Shane McMahon apparently getting right up in Brock's face as well. Whatever the case, presumably because Shane diffused it with one of his legendary submission holds, the hatchet was seemingly buried the very next day, with the Beast Incarnate inking a brand new contract with WWE. And at number 1, The Undertaker confronts HBK at WrestleMania 14. Everybody's heard the backstage stories about Shawn Michaels' behaviour in the 90s. His political reputation is entirely earned, and at Mania 14 it's thought that even though it was clearly Steve Austin's time to shine and win the big belt and carry the company forward, HBK was reluctant to do business and drop the gold to the rising figurehead. Jim Cornette has gone into this before, and Austin himself has strongly implied it. The story goes that The Undertaker, after what happened with Michaels and Bret Hart in Montreal, was ready to take care of business. He apparently taped up his hands and waited for Michaels by the curtain, letting Shawn know that if he didn't do the right thing, he was in for a whole lot of trouble. Even Bruce Pritchard has backed this up on Something to Wrestle With, claiming that this went down right there in front of him and that The Undertaker was sending a clear subliminal message. Michaels, in his account of what went down, denies the bit about the Undertaker taping his fists, but does admit that Taker pretty much told the locker room that if Shawn didn't do business and put Stone Cold over, he'd have knocked his block off. But it never came to this. Austin won, Shawn avoided the wrath of the Taker, and the world kept on spinning, though HBK was sidelined the night after, having injured his lower back while wrestling Taker at the Royal Rumble a few months prior. But what do you guys reckon of these wacky WrestleMania stories, and can you think of any others? Let us know down in the comment section below, and then don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. Then you can follow us on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE and myself at Andy H. Murray if you want to tell me how wrong I am.